Good day everyone, welcome to another experience and impressions video. And today's topic, The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings. The Witcher 2 is an interesting one. For me it was a worse experience than The Witcher 1, especially because of the horrible UI experience and technical issues. It did get better once you got used to it, but my overall sentiment towards the game is worse than for the predecessor. But first, as usual, some context. The Witcher 2 is an RPG or action RPG from 2011, published and developed once again by CD Projekt Red. It is again following Geralt of Rivia like the first game, continuing the story in his perspective. It has sold well and has very high review scores, which leads me to think I'm the only one with the issues I'll present here. But nonetheless, these videos are my experience and thoughts, so let's dive in. In terms of gameplay loops, this game offers much of the same as The Witcher 1, which is a good thing. Lots of talking, some fighting and some alchemy. The combat system has been worked on quite a bit. There are more options to use, like thrown ranged weapons and traps, in addition to the swordplay, bombs and signs we know from the first game. It is also a bit more actiony by not just having to click at the right time to continue the combo. For me, it often ended up in spamming mouse clicks and dodge rolling away from time to time though. The minigames were also extended. In addition to the fist fighting and dice poker, there is arm wrestling this time around. I didn't bother with the minigames if I could avoid it though, since the mechanics for arm wrestling were not fun. The fighting was just quick time events, and dice poker, well, that's the most enjoyable out of the bunch, but more or less the same thing as in The Witcher 1. There have been one or two stealth sections in some quests, and I did not like those sections. They did fit thematically, but not mechanically for me. And I didn't count the amount of times I accidentally toggled torches during these missions. One major problem I had with the changed systems is the potion consumption. While in Witcher 1 you could pause the game, drink the potions you wanted and continue on with the fight, in this game you can only drink potions before a fight. This obviously led to me only drinking potions before obvious boss fights, making alchemy a lot less useful in the game. This is probably the worst change for me in terms of gameplay mechanics. Now for character progression. There are some standard RPG things here. A skill tree with 3 different schools or directions, one for swordplay, one for alchemy and one for magic. I took the sword tree, but magic could also be fun, I guess. I don't really see the alchemy tree to shine, for the simple fact that the alchemy system has been destroyed by not being able to drink potions while in combat. In addition to the tree, there are certain nodes on the tree that can be enhanced with mutagens. Sadly, this system is also quite strange because using a mutagen is permanent lock-in, meaning it can't even be overridden, making these slots only useful later in the game, when it is clear you don't find any better mutagens than you already have. The gear progression is partly done through a crafting system. You can craft gear, bombs, traps and blade coatings and potions through alchemy. These crafting systems were destroyed for me by the horrible UI behind them. You get plans and formulae for creating certain items, but you can't reasonably sort and filter the plans, so finding the exact plan or potion you want to make is a pain. You can't even sort by potions or weapon oils. After the frustration, I engaged with these systems only when I absolutely had to, because an upgrade would be well worth it, or I ran out of basic potions. The obtainable gear in general was pretty limited again, as in The Witcher 1, but the upgrades, especially in terms of weapons, felt much more significant. Where I feel confident in saying that you could beat The Witcher 1 reasonably with the starting equipment and not feel underpowered, I don't think that's the case here in The Witcher 2. Not a bad thing, obtaining new shiny stuff is fun after all, if not obtained through the crafting system, that is. In terms of story, one point begs to be mentioned, and that is the split of the acts 2 and 3 into entirely different storylines, with mostly different main protagonists. This means to see the entire story you need at least 2 playthroughs. As in the first Witcher game, the world building is fantastic and the game tackles more mature and dark themes. One minor thing I noticed in terms of world building: the swearing and cursing of characters felt less natural than in The Witcher 1. Almost a bit forced, as if the writers didn't use it for creating a believable world, but to boast of how mature this game is with all the vulgar language and violence. The choices from the first game did not have a vast impact, mostly some bonus starting items if rare items were obtained in The Witcher 1 playthrough. The end of the game also clearly sets up a third game, which we obviously got and I still look forward to playing, especially since a lot of people hold part 3 in very high regards. As for presentation, the game, as already mentioned, has a very mature theme and doesn't shy away from showing nudity, swearing, cursing, gambling, etc. All the dialogue is fully voiced again, which is a big plus. The rest of the sounds and music are also decent. Visually, the game is also a bit of a step up from The Witcher 1, but not flawlessly, which brings us to the performance section. The first point in regards to performance is the pop-in of graphics. I've never played a game where it was as noticeable, and I'm usually pretty lenient with noting that stuff, because it doesn't bother me too much to a certain degree. But here it was just too noticeable. I also had to restart the game for various reasons. Once the camera did not move at all, some menus did not work, or some other random stuff that did not work. The game also wouldn't run on my CPU out of the box, and I had to disable several cores on the CPU and disable hyperthreading to even get the game to start. That's the first modern, quote, game I played that had this issue, with modern meaning past 2007-ish. The last point is more of a nitpick in comparison to the aforementioned. And that is the lip synchronization did not always work, making some cutscenes and talking to people a bit weird with the characters not moving their mouth. So all in all, coming from The Witcher 1, which ran pretty decently, this game shocked me with the performance aspect. As for miscellaneous points, I just have one, and that is that on various follow X or escort Y quests, the NPC slammed doors in Geralt's face when trying to follow them, which I found funny the first few times. In conclusion, this is one of the games where I play each of the story paths once and probably never touch it again. The technical issues and UI design was just too horrible to handle for me. And that was my video on The Witcher 2. I hope you enjoyed. As usual, let me know your experience with the game or ideas for improvements. Also, like and subscribe if you are feeling generous. Thank you very much for watching and see you on the next video.